Hello, my name's Rendi, and I've been stuck in the same fight cave for over a month. 2 waves a day keeps my sanity at bay. That's my motto anyways. Now, there's a little bit of a twist into how I got into this situation, otherwise known as this awful fight cave experience. And to be honest, it's the worst experience yet I've had in this entire game over my 20 years of playing it. But this series is all about taking on near impossible tasks that must be overcame. I'm an Ironman defense peer with 1 attack and 1 strength, and I've been attempting to prepare for this fight cave for over 2 years now to get enough strength bonus to hit 2s with a poison weapon, as it increased my accuracy by being able to roll an extra hit. Instead of just hitting a 0 and a 1, I can now hit a 0, a 1, and a 2. I needed to hit a 2 for the fight caves to cut down the time by upwards of 33%, which is going to be a lot considering this is going to be over a 100-hour fight cave attempt. Yes, hitting more at these very low levels increases my accuracy, not only my damage. Saving supplies by being able to hit more was also a main goal for me in this attempt, and as we'll find out later, these supplies were going to be cutting it extremely close, even with this accuracy boost. I don't know if I can physically as well mentally overcome this extremely stressful challenge, even with this 33% boost, and the minimized utilization of supplies through that boost. I've spent 6,000 hours across multiple accounts preparing for today's goal, and we'll see if I'm truly up for the challenge. This will be the longest and most convoluted fire cape I've yet attempted, worse than that of the level 3 fire cape I completed 3 years ago. This is because I have to get up close and personal to every NPC and attempt to poke them to death with a poison proc using my awful offensive stats. I also won't have unlimited recoils through the Ring of Suffering like I did on my level 3 account. New lures, tactics, and terrifying wave spawns will all be seen in this fight cave attempt today. My estimation for this fight cave was close to 100 hours, but we'll later find out this wasn't even close. Follow along with me on my journey as we use very untraditional methods of combat, wave lures, tick eating, and more that's never been seen while we proceed to take on the worst fight caves of them all. Before we get into that insane fight cave attempt, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor who made the production of this video possible, Enlisted. Enlisted is a World War II multiplayer shooter. It has a strong focus on historical authenticity while keeping the gameplay dynamic and players always in the middle of action. What I enjoy about this game is it's super realistic, it's got cross-platform support, and you can hold 2 primary weapons. Most of the first-person shooters I've played in the past have only 1 singular primary and then 1 sidearm. This one, though, has 2 primaries, and I can get a heavy and light weapon that can basically put me towards different playstyles at different times in the match. So what are you waiting for? Play for free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. There's a free bonus for registering by following my link in the description below, 3 days of premium time, and several orders for troops and weapons. Welcome to my personal hell. Before even stepping foot in the fight caves, I did about 15 hours of research and wave testing on an alt main. I would also take this alt in alongside my defense peer to scout waves ahead of time and simulate every possible experience to lower the risk of death on each of these waves. On this test account with max stats currently simulating the waves, I died over 8 times. Yes, on a maxed account, simulating what I was going to be doing on a shitty Ironman with 1 attack, 1 strength, 1 prayer, and only 74 HP. That's because, once again, how I was to take on these waves was something I had never done in my wildest dreams and was a little bit more sophisticated than what I was used to, even when comparing this, like I said, to the level 3 fire cape and others I had done in the past. Like many people know nowadays, the fight caves has predetermined spawn points based on the time you enter the caves. These can all be found on the wiki along with their current times in the game. I needed to look for a spawn pattern that would optimize for close combat and the least amount of lures needed. After looking across all of them, they all had similar problems, and ones that I could not overcome with something so simple. No matter the rotation, I would always face a similar number of conflicting scenarios across multiple waves. So in the end, I decided to go with what I've always used and what I'm most comfortable with using as a 1 prayer doing fire cape attempts, and that is rotation number 2. While in my testing, I mapped some very untraditional ways to overcome the NPCs and weird wave lures, which I'll get into more specifically later. I basically found out that I'll need multiple combo eats for 2 select waves that I'll be using in exact tick clearance and succession of attacks from NPCs that will act as combo tick eats to an extent. I could avoid using some of these combo eats and combo tick eats and get a couple of Phoenix necklaces, although I didn't want to get Scorpia KC, and at this time this was my only way of acquiring these Phoenix necklaces, as I did not have the magic level to enchant diamond jewelry since I am 1 magic. I didn't want to get Scorpia KC at this time because that would take another 100 hours likely, and a highly organized retribution alt usage similar to how I got my Berserker ring, which was a pain in the ass. Instead, I would be relying on this tuna potato, 2 brews, a shark, and a karambwan for the 2 waves I would need them that I'll later address. Regular 1 to 2 combo tick eats were also required and made by using these sacks of onions I brought along with a knife and bowl, plus my 76 plus cooking to make bowls of fried onions and never burn them and be able to cook them right here inside the fight cave itself. According to my calculations though, with this new method and using combo tick eats what I'm most comfortable with and what I used in my level 3 cape, I should have about 3 onions left on average and attempt this with little relures needed for 6-hour wave resets now that I could actually hit 2s and had that accuracy boost. This was going to be cutting it close no matter what, and a little bad RNG could use these 3 onions up in no time. Lastly, according to my original plans, I would require in my inventory a stack of around 500 purple sweets. Now I currently had around 750 total sweets, which I achieved from over 800 clue scrolls and nearly 400 hours of clue hunting. I would be using a lot of these, and if I failed this attempt, well, I'd have to go back to clue hunting once more for hundreds of hours. I also put in my inventory a book from starting the Elemental Workshop 2, which I would use to red X some NPCs, and if my inventory was full, instead of going towards my inventory, this would go towards the ground, which I could utilize for 1 minute for some red X's to save spot some of the NPCs in very specific cases. But I was not going to be using this book for a lot of instances, and I'll be getting into why later on. I also changed my settings to make my F2 button instead of my wielded tab, my questless tab, as I would need a handy interface to pop up to hold the red X whenever I was using this method. I also brought a rock cake for keeping my hit points at 1 during some waves, as I would need to start some lures at 1 HP to make sure I did not get overstacked out on some lures with the combo tick eats using purple sweets to fried onions. As you can see here, I also brought a select number of recoils for very few select waves that I could not get up close and personal to for some of those NPCs. Obviously, I would try to minimize how many waves I needed to use recoils on because I could only bring so many since I no longer had a Ring of Suffering like I had on other accounts that were not Ironman. I also brought a spear switch for more attack bonus to use on the higher defense NPCs while holding my shield for more tank bonus in other situations and usually with the lower level NPCs. I also opted in bringing the new Nezi helm which I had acquired in episode number 12 because it now put me at enough strength bonus to hit the 2s with my poison dagger and with my KP spear. And the last thing I brought along was a longbow, and we'll get into why I need that much further down the line. Before going in, I also stocked up on bonds to put in my bond pouch in case I ran out of onions and sacks of onions on later waves, as I would need to fill my inventory to red X some NPCs in the caves on these later waves to keep them safe spotted, and you needed a full inventory to red X something. So with 2 years and over 6,000 hours behind my back of preparation for this cave, with my prior research planning the lures on mains in this cave, my wonky inventory planned out to a T as I would nearly have nothing left on this account, and lastly my rotation picked out, I finally decided to hop into fight caves and begin my month-long journey to the greatest achievement yet on this account. waves 1 to 30 were relatively simple, well, for the most part. There were some new things I had to do with lures though, such as red Xing by utilizing the beaten book here. This book was not a cure-all in the slightest. In fact, it made my life in the fight caves much more difficult than I could have imagined. Without some kind of cheat client or AHK, hitting this accurately all the time with the factors of lag and much more was extremely difficult. Every minute the scroll on the floor would despawn, and that meant before that minute was over at some point I would have to both read and attack the NPC in the same tick. I would have to read first because if I attacked the NPC first I would move back before dropping the scroll on the ground. Now if I read and then attacked the NPC and then the two ticks were separated, the NPC would have one tick to move before I was to move back and hit it, meaning it could get unstuck from this red X location, such as this 90 here getting unstuck from what looks like a lag. Now I have a lot of mechanical skill and I could hit the book and the attack during the same tick, but sometimes it would be between the two ticks or a slight interference of lag, and not utilizing something as packet manipulation or a cheat would be very difficult to 100% guarantee I hit the book and the attack in the same tick, because the next tick would carry over the action from the previous tick if you were to lag whatsoever. Now if I did have a slight lag and the NPC got unluckily stuck in some situations, I would have to basically run to the corner and X-log and hope that my 74 HP and high defense was enough to withstand 60 seconds of 90 hits before logging out. Or in some cases, I would have to waste recoils and purple sweets and take on these 90s with those in order to finish the wave. But I would later find out that I did not have enough recoils and sweets to keep doing this, and this was a huge complication in my plans. I was also not able to reach a lot of the NPCs even with this new lure method and by utilizing the beaten book red Xing mechanic. I would instead lure a lot of the level 90 rangers all the way from the east side to the west side where their flinch spots were. There's two relative flinch spots that can be used for both the rangers and majors on this west side, and that is having the ranger mage southeast of you on the northwest corner of the west rock, or northeast of you on the southwest corner of the west rock. What is crazy to me here is these were supposed to be the simple waves, but I also sometimes spent upwards of 3 hours on some singular waves trying to hit and poison one time the 180s. This was not a good outlook to the entire fight caves as to what was to come next, being the 360s, because I would have to double poison these as well, which had double the defense of the 180s. But we'll worry about that at a later time. Now keep in mind, when poisoning the NPCs like these 180s, I have to hit true damage of a 1 or 2, which I can now hit a 2. But this does not work with a 0 hit and poison. Once I hit this damage, I only have a 1 in 4 chance at poisoning each NPC, which is why this whole cave took so long with 1 prayer and 1 attack, 1 strength, no mage, or no range. For these first 30 waves and even some after this, I would juggle items on the floor to unequip my shield and then switch to the spear once the lower level NPCs were cleared and the 90 was cleared. I would use my shield with the 90 in most cases because of lag spikes and the possibility of running out from under its body with that book situation we addressed earlier. There were a lot of lures I could utilize on these earlier waves to easily pull out the 90s and get them into my melee zone without having to pull out the 180 as well as other NPCs. I practiced this here with my method but continued to fail again and again with the book. After this, I avoided therefore using the red X method with the book for flinching as much as I possibly could on these NPCs, since it was, well, unreliable unless I were to cheat and use some sort of packet client or AHK for this, which I definitely did not want to do and risk my account. I found other flinch spots and lure spots for the 180s as well during these waves and used those as much as possible when I could. An odd one I can be seen using is one on the western wall north of the western claw rock, which utilizes a vent and to a T the exact size of the 180, being a larger NPC. Later on for 180s, I also utilized the Doors Red X instead of the book on waves that I could to avoid having to do that extra double interaction in one tick, which had caused so many issues. At some points I even used knives on Vince to utilize the Red X's as well without the book, and this was a bit more risky as it did require multiple actions in one tick yet again, but not on the NPC's attack. This all made me come to a giant realization. My plan I had for Red Xing the majors later on many of the waves with this book, and determining how long it would take to flinch them with a destined to happen lag, was going to be utterly impossible. The majors were destined to get unstuck if these rangers were, and the long periods of time I would be flinching them for, and were going to hit me and likely bash me out no matter what, as each major would likely take hours to kill. So I prepared for entirely different plans and switched up my plan strategy to lure every single 360 to the western flinch spot, no matter the required combo tick eats and the strategy. On most waves with the 360 majors, I would have to do this very last, so other NPCs did not come with them and ruin my tick eats, possibly bashing my low HP, and therefore ruin my combo tick eats as well. Once again, these two flinch spots are safe for the range and mage NPCs as long as they're positioned properly and can be shown on the screen right now. All the way up until wave 30 I had been using these as well, although a combo ticketing lure strategy would not be necessary on the lower level 90s to move them, as they did not hit as high and I could just tank their damage with my high HP and high defense. I want to also point out that this fight cave timer you'll see throughout the video in the top left corner is usually incorrect. Actually, every time it's incorrect. That's because when I close my client it refreshes, or sometimes it just doesn't work at all, and since this cape will be taking me over a month of time to achieve, well, I'm going to be refreshing my client a lot, especially with the required weekly Wednesday updates. Currently I was at wave 30 with about 30 hours and a week's time. Only one more wave to go until the real challenge began, and the long major waves that required 2 poisons on each of these NPCs. So wave 31 plus. The first mage waves went somehow better than most of the 180 melee waves. I got super lucky on the first wave here and double poisoned this thing in a matter of 20 minutes. Sadly, this was just a hopeful fluke though, and for the next 30 waves, I would be looking at an average time completion per wave at around 3 hours. The 360 would start behind Italy a lot of these waves, and I would have to clear out all the NPCs before I was to lure them west. And this was because I did not want to get smacked by melee hits whenever I'm around 1 HP. I once again would lure these mages from the Italy rock east to the west with a series of combo tick eats using the fried onions and purple sweets. I found out if you start specifically from this vent, just barely, you take 1 hit from the 360 and give yourself just enough clearance running past its second attack, and therefore allowing you to rock kick down back to 1 HP, then proceed with the start of a combo tick eat to get the NPC from one side of the western rock to the flinch spot southwest. If I were to leave the normal spot of Italy here and run west to the western rock, I would have to get hit twice by the major and waste my bowl of fried onions as a combo tick eat, and this is because the 360 would normally overshot my HP since it is calculating its second attack fired before the first one even hits me. Therefore it's looking at my old HP, and that's why my second tick eat must be at a higher interval than the first. Since a fried onion heals 5 hit points and a purple sweet heals between 1 and 3 hit points, this guarantees I never get overshot on my HP when running far distances from these majors. So by combo tick eating and clicking the onions after the first damage touches me, I'm going to be guaranteeing to be eating over double what my HP was before the 360's first few attacks outside of a close projectile range, as they are calculating on my old HP. Once up close and personal though, within the first line of this 360 I marked, and while running out of it, it will only be able to hit based on my actual HP between the attacks because the projectile gets to me quicker than if I were to run outside of this line, making purple sweets efficient on their own. So each lure of the 360s to this rock would require this new launch tile with 1 purple sweet, then rock cake eats back to 1 HP, 1 purple sweet, then 1 fried onion after the damage, 2 more purple sweets, and voila. A total of 4 purple sweets and 1 fried onion from east to west safe spots to get the major in the flinch spot safely. Once I had the major, or really any NPC in the safe spot, I would put on a metronome plugin and wait 9 ticks between attacks for flinching these NPCs. But for majors, when my HP was so low after these lures, I decided to wait a little bit longer, being 10 or 11 ticks between each attack. If I didn't have the metronome on, I could not know while safe spotted if the servers were lagging, and this was a problem. The metronome plugin would audibly recognize actual lag and would hiccup audibly on the ticks, so I would know to wait more ticks behind the rock before attacking the NPC if I heard something weird or a hiccup with this metronome. The second poison I would need to deal before the major went back up from 64 to 97 hit points, so I had an average of 30 minutes to hit this second poison. According to my calculations, if I was attacking the major every 10 ticks, my average poison chance should be around 28 minutes of hitting this NPC at this interval. So it was definitely possible to re-poison this NPC before he got back up past 97 hit points, because that regen rate was 33 minutes. I just couldn't get lazy with it, and I would need average luck on the second poison. Unfortunately, many times though, my luck was less than average, and I spent upwards of 3 or 4 poisons, and sometimes even 6 hours, along with 6-hour relogs and the waste of more supplies reluring these waves. If you did not know, you get force logged out of RuneScape after being logged in for 6 hours straight, and this was my worst enemy and my constant fear. The first few mage waves weren't terrible besides the bad luck in terms of a mechanical challenge, as I could lure them after dealing with the smaller level NPCs that I talked about earlier. Well, except for wave 35. Here is where I had to avoid the 45 melee by just a tick on the right timing of my run from north to south, and combo eats to finish with a brew right before the 22 hit me to out-heal some of the possible incoming melee damage from that bat, which could easily kill me with 1 hit point. So here is where I truly needed to use my first brew dose, and I did not have many of these to spare. By performing this lure I practiced countless times on my alt account. I would trap off the mage behind a melee and just have to deal with the bat, with a little bit of HP from the brew I had ate right before coming into contact with it. I would then run west as much as possible and just fill up on purple sweets to make sure my HP was optimal to take on a bat head on with my shield and bone dagger. Already I was dealing with some tough lures on these low level waves. So tough, in fact, I failed the lure at first, but I had known in my testing that if I had failed this, it wasn't a life or death situation on this wave. I would just need to kill the melee NPC on me and waste another brew dose and relog for this wave reset. But now this was no good. I had no more brew doses to waste. This is how tight my inventory management was. I could have only failed this run one time, and I had already done that. So waves like this are where Phoenix necklaces would have came in handy, but there is even much worse to come where I'm not sure a Phoenix necklace could have just handled that alone. On the second attempt I was more successful and everything went to plan. Besides this hiccup and some additional testing to get the lure right, all went well for the next few waves. Once the rangers came in though, around wave 38, and about 20 hours of dealing with the poisons on the first few mages, my prospects began to change. That's because in my testing I did find a way to get a lot of the 90 rangers in a melee zone that was safe spottable with a red X from the book, but this was just barely by one singular tile. And it worked from southern spawns and the middle spawn of these rangers. But like I've emphasized so many times, with a lag, misclick, or anything, these 90s could easily jump out of this spot, requiring me to just tank them and hope for the best, or X-log and hope for the best. After X-logging, I would sit at a vent with an interface up and wait for my HP to go all the way back up before relogging and trying the lure an entire wave once again. Some 90s coming from northwest and southwest spawns though were nearly impossible for me to get into melee zones where I would not have to recoil them. Although I did figure out a way in my prior 15 hours of testing on the main how to get some of the northwest spawns into melee range pretty simply, but just barely. Although this method required very risky and specific movement to keep the 360 back and hoping to just poison the 90s as quick as possible before running out of health, this seemed to work in my testing and in theory. But once I was actually in here on the defense spear and on these waves, I realized it was not worth the risk, and it was almost impossible with one attack and strength to get the poison off, even with my high defense level before I started dying to these rangers. Therefore, I decided to use some unplanned recoils that I was saving for Jad on these northwest 90 waves to kill them with some more unplanned purple sweets and tick-eat them, also taking my armor off to do so. I was quickly going through many more sweets and recoils than I had planned for, and the entire route I thought I would be taking through the fight caves at this point became somewhat distorted, and I had to look towards new plans for different waves. I overcame these range and mage waves, but with a large cost to my supplies, and things were looking grim. If I were to complete this cape on this attempt, it looks like my calculations, luck, and more would have to be spot on for the entire rest of the cave. As well, I would have to do a lot more research now than I had planned for on the fly for upcoming waves. I calculated on an average wave I couldn't have more than 4 6-hour logs at 360s from here on out. Luckily, the average time to kill the 360s was between 2 and 3 hours per wave based on the amount of other NPCs there, so this wasn't likely to happen. But I could just get super unlucky from here and run out of supplies no matter what. I would also have to now look at some future waves I had planned on recoiling and see if I could use alternate methods to complete them to save these recoils and purple sweets I had spent on prior 90 waves I was not planning on using them for. I also did not want to poison Jad with a spear, as this heavily relied on RNG due to his defense being so high, his HP being so high, and him having healers. The original plan I had was to recoil him like I had on the level 3 and tick-eat his hits and save tens if not hundreds of hours on the final wave in relogs. But if that's what had to be done in the end, then that was that. At this point I was pretty much guaranteed to have to poison Jad. And it turns out the harder route was the one I would have to take if I could make it all the way to the end. One of the worst waves in the range mage duos of wave 38 through 45 was that of wave 41. This was the wave that required precise eating on certain ticks, a precise run at the exact right moment, and a load of tick eats since I did not have phoenix necklaces. This wave single-handedly would consume 3 of my inventory spaces and be one of the worst ever to pull off. I did a lot of prior testing with this wave and testing on the alt I had during the cave to make sure I had it all down packed. This was the plan. I would interface to the vent far away in the northwestern corner to start the wave away from all NPCs before they spawned in. I would make sure my HP stays at 1 during this time and release the interface long before any HP regeneration was to occur. I would start with 1 HP, run in outside of the area of the 360, eat an onion to 2 HP, which would then hit me back down to 1 HP after his attack. Then after the first damage rolled in, I would eat a fried onion, putting me up to 6 HP, which means he then hit a 4 on me from the prior attack. I would then brew after that attack, which then now the range would come in and I would actually go down to 11 HP, which then I could then shark, which would put me at 30 HP, back down to 1 HP if the range and mage max hit a 17 plus 13. Then for the final tick eat, after the mage projectile hits me, I would combo eat a tuna potato into a brew into a karambwan all in one singular tick, to go from 1 to 51 plus 1 HP being 52 HP, being then able to out-eat all of the max hits of the NPCs if they were to occur, such as a 31 from my prior calculated HP from the mage, a 13 from the range being its max hit, and a 7 from the 45 being that NPC's max hit. Sound complicated enough? Well, it was. Let me play this all out on the screen for you and slow it down and put on the exact ranges of what my HP should be in after each attack and what type of food should be ate after each attack. So by far one of the craziest solutions I've ever came up with for a wave. Actually, probably hands down the craziest solution I've ever come up with for a wave on any account. So everything was now trapped, but the solution wasn't over. I didn't have the sweets to tick-eat every single flinch poke on this 90 from the 360 in the back like I did on prior attempts with fire capes on normal accounts. I would have to wait for my HP to regen in this safe spot, then drag out the 90 and hope that I could pull off a red X book flinch kill without lag or messing it up one too many times. The scroll would be placed on the floor, then the 90 would be lured out. If the 90 got too far east, it was all over, and I could not reset this wave with an X-log because I did not have the combo eats to go through that lure again. Once this range was cleared, I then had to make sure I could also finish off the 360 before the 6-hour log, and just pray to the RNG gods that I did not get unlucky with my poison hits, or it was all over. Luckily, I was blessed. I didn't mess up the red X or the lag during it with the 90, and I finished off the major in plenty of time for once. Success! Now I was on to the next wave, where I would waste more purple sweets and recoils to take down another faraway range. Each of these recoil waves used about 1 1/4 recoil and 80 purple sweets since my defense was so high even without any gear on. It was very hard for the level 90 range to hit me and to get recoils off on this NPC. 99 hit points, as I stated before, would have also been extremely smart to get before attempting any of this, but I'm an idiot and in a rush to get this done after 2 years. Many of the times I messed up and X-logged, I would wait with the interface at the start of the waves, just waiting for my hit points to go back up to full for over an hour before relogging yet again to reset the wave. At the end of most waves, I would also wait for my HP regen to go back up to full if it was not already there. I would also wait for HP to go up before possible range red X's in case I messed up on the book and would need to X-log while having higher HP and a higher chance of surviving that X-log. Finally, the melee mage waves had started. This was wave 46 through 52. But what I thought would be a break on these waves was far from it. Right off the bat on wave 46, we would already have to do some messed up combo tick-eat lures with fried onions, purple sweets, and perfect run timing to trap off the 360 north of the 180 into this safe spot. If I was too late on the run, it was all over. And if I was too early, it was all over. I had to run tick perfect or the mage would have been in front of the melee or behind it, in both instances killing me. After this, to make sure I wouldn't be possibly dying due to laggy red X's with the book hitting 2 actions in 1 tick, I decided to use the door more for the 180s over the book to kill the 180 melees in most of these waves, since the mage could not reach me from the southern side due to it being such a large tile NPC. I hid the escape option on the door with RuneLight to make sure I wouldn't just accidentally leave the cave 70 hours in. Yes, that would have been hilarious, but also rage-inducing, and we got down the more safe leave option with a quest journal in order to red X that door. I tested this all on a main before trying it on the spot, and seemingly it worked much easier than red Xing with the book for these very specific waves. I also continued to use some of the more unconventional safe spots I mentioned earlier on the northwestern side when I got a southwestern major spawn and a northwestern 180 spawn with this vent, which allowed me to once again not have to use the red X with the book, at least until the rangers came into play on wave 53. But before we even got into those more complex waves on wave 53 through 62, there was one last major hurdle to overcome, and that was the complexity of wave 50. Probably the worst wave of them all, wave 50. One that partially depended on luck to guide me through, along with super precise planning and on-the-spot testing with the main account. Also, the execution had to be tick perfect once again, which was extremely technical and easy to mess up. I really had one shot at this because I wanted to use my brew to pre-dose to increase my HP for the start of this wave. Step 1. I would use an item and interface to the corpse in the northeast corner of the room, meanwhile spamming notes on the ground that would last upwards of 1 minute before they despawned. This would place a note exactly where I wanted it to be in the body of a 360 that would later come up towards me. I would then run far back west as the wave spawned to make sure that the 360 was also far enough west to block off the incoming 22 and level 45 that were to be behind it. I would start with full HP and just hope the major didn't bust out 2 max hits on me, or 2 40 plus hits on me for that matter, since my HP was so low. If I was tick perfect on the run towards the major, it would only hit me twice before going to the red X scroll in his body. If I was 1 tick too late though, as I was many times on my main during tests, well, I would get hit 3 times and drastically increase my chances of dying. Once inside the body of the major red X with an interface open, I would wait for my HP to regen to full, as the next part required a little bit of RNG, a lot of HP, and well, could go south fast if I got hit by even 1 NPC. At this point, I had my fingers on the quick hop keys for any mess ups that might occur. I tried to stay on the most northeastern tile of the major at all times, as that was the one he couldn't 1-tick hit me from when moved, as he was blocked from both south and western sides because of where I red X'd him and how the NPCs aggressed to me lined up to each of these corresponding sides next to him. This would make him in the end in the corner, if I could survive the walk to the corner that was, and keep the NPCs at bay on both the south and western sides. And that's why I was on the farthest northeastern tile within this major. The 180 was west of him, and the 22 and 45 were south of him. Eventually, after actually dying on my test account trying this multiple times, I went for the gold on the real one, and managed to somehow do everything magnificently perfect, along with getting some decent RNG on the 2 hits following up on my account, while going inside the 360's body to prepare the wave. Another interesting thing I noticed while testing this on the main account is the pathing had to be precise during this lure, because if the 22 was on the western side instead of the 180, things could go south quickly, as going inside a 1x1's body such as the 22 instead of a much larger 180's body could make that 22 transparent and eventually make the 360 go straight through his body to the west, unsticking him from the northeast corner of the fight caves. Therefore, with this specific alignment, I needed the 180 west and the smaller mobs south. I would basically stand 1 tile away from going out to the 360 west inside the 180's body. I had the 360 perfectly trapped in the corner, and I could then use my run along with the red X from the mage attack to never get hit by either the melee or the mage. The only catch was run energy. I had to wait a couple extra of ticks between melee attacks on the mage, about 11 to be precise instead of the normal 9 or 10. If maybe I had trained my agility some more before this wouldn't have been the case, but I could only regen so much run energy in 9 ticks to where if I constantly flinched the Ketsec perfectly, I would eventually hit 0 run energy and have to wait for my run to go back up anyways. This made my average poison time on this NPC a lot less, but still definitely possible to get done in less than 6 hours. I was in this corner though, therefore, for quite a bit of time, and I did not want to have to relog and redo this wave, as it was extremely frightening to say the least. And I didn't have any more brews to pre-dose with, unless I wanted to sacrifice ones I was going to be using on later waves. After a couple hours, I got lucky enough to finally kill the mage, although a little worse than average RNG on this, and I was then able to take the other melee NPCs away to a safe spot, flinch those, and finish off the wave. But things are just now getting juicy as we enter into wave 53 through 62, and that's going to include mage, range, and melee NPCs all together. For most of these waves, I was just sweating on how many sweets I would have left if I made it to Jad, and I would look for ways to try and save some sweets and recoils along the way, with some onions on northwest lures of 360s from east to south, by testing some of the tile ranges and staying in the short range of the 360 with the following run pattern. Now I only needed 2 purple sweets for instance, and no onions to move 360s from the northwestern area to the flinch spot south, versus previously needing an onion and 2 sweets. And this was simply by clicking first near the skeleton, then rewriting my second click south of the western rock. The first of the most complex waves during wave 53 through 62 was 53. I had to save sweets with my new strategies, so wave 53 I had mapped a whole new way than I originally planned for, and I did not want to use recoils on this wave and simply just tick eat the range, as I did not have the sweets or the recoils to do so. So the new plan was this. I decided I would take a singular mage hit by doing my normal run west, then the 180 would trap this mage from hitting me again, but I would have to deal with the 90 ranger west of the northern rock now, and hopefully I was able to place scrolls inside of its body that I could red X off of in order to avoid having to use recoils. This could go terribly, and I would either have to X-log with minimal HP, possibly because of the major max is a 48 and I'm 74 total hit points, or I would have to maybe use recoils, which I didn't have, and sweets, which I would need for later waves. I decided it was going to be required though, as I could not waste another wave tick eating an entire 80 plus sweets and recoil on a ranger.
Thumbs up, let's do this. Leroy Jenkins.
I luckily pulled this off with the book's red X's and got the NPC in place despite it moving at first. This was because there was a chance it could be all over if the 90 moved out too far and my X-log didn't work out as planned. But we got through this wave with bare bones material used and no recoils or purple sweets. I also had to do an interesting lure after this 180 finally died, but luckily my HP was so high at this point and I had let it regen earlier, so we didn't have to use a singular purple sweet, as the 360's hits never put me under its max hit. After wave 53, wave 54 through 62 was okay. I had to use a lot of the battered book, which I hated doing, but I got kind of used to it. More of the book's red X's were required rather than using the door for melees as well, because of the possibility of unseating 90s to the south, which have smaller tile ranges, and I'm using the west side of the door to flinch the 180s, which normally this would block off the 360, but not the 90 rangers in these instances. I was seemingly having some better internet connection, and I was getting better, I guess, at using the book, even though I still don't believe I had made a true mistake yet with it. But once again, lag was our worst possible enemy to this entire fight cave. At one point even, I just completely DC'd while using the book, and my ISP was under maintenance for the entire rest of the day. The metronome just stopped making sound, so I'm assuming I'm lagging. Connection lost. Okay. I didn't even want to log into mobile to see if I had died, because I truly didn't know if the 180 would come out and attack me if that interface collapsed while disconnected, but my frustration was building, along with the immense pressure of now over 80 hours of time that could be taken away at any second. I logged back in the next day and all was fine, but I was still just constantly thinking of the what ifs and if I could DC at any moment and ruin this entire fight cave attempt. Wave 56 was another one of those waves I had failed multiple times in my testing and had to time everything including combo tickets perfectly and even the run perfectly, or the 45 wouldn't trap off the mage to the north. For instance, this test of the wave was a failure because the 45 was west of the mage instead of south of the mage. So not only did the combo tickets have to be timed perfectly between these two NPCs attacks, but also the run had to be timed perfectly. It was another one of those waves I would have to use recoils as well as sweets on, because luckily the position I was in, I was able to tick eat the range in just enough distance without moving him from his spawn, and not have to use anything but purple sweets to do so. The process this wave involved was eating a fried onion to tick eat both simultaneous attacks from the 90 and 360, then a brew after the first 90s projectile hit me, before running to the very southwestern point of that western wall, at just the right time when the 45 would then barely trap off the 360 into its safe spot. I had never before done tasks like this, which required me to tick eat projectiles simultaneously from two NPCs at the same time, despite their projectiles hitting me at two separate times. As well, I had to plan to then combo eat a second time at just the right time to compensate for old HP and both of the two NPCs' next attacks hitting me. And once again, all of these are just some of the examples of the super complex lures I had to use for this very specific type of account. I had just one sip of brew left for this wave. Although it was the last time I would need any brews at all, I had to make sure this was done perfectly. The hard part now though was over. I completed the wave, but I had no brews left. Just sweets, onions, and recoils. I would now also have to pull out bonds to Red X NPCs, which I had stored in my bond pouch as well, because of the very few onions I had left at this time, which I saw coming. Supplies was running thin, but this run did look possible. I didn't have any complications really again until wave 58, which once again was a very interesting lure to be seen. I went again to interface and click on a corpse far away in the northwestern corner, planting red X scrolls along the route, one which would be in the spawn of an NPC I would utilize, which was a level 90. I would red X this 90 on its spawn, hopefully without messing it up, flinching it from the western side, which still kept everything behind it. I took every NPC off one at a time after the 90, then finally proceeded to spend hours killing the major to complete the wave. From here, supplies was looking grim, but just enough. I had just enough sweets for a few more mage lures to the flinch spot, some Jad attempts, and what would be a lot of sweets for wave 62. Luckily, since I didn't have enough recoils for Jad now, I had a few to spare. And when I said at the beginning of this video that I did not want to beat and book Red X any of the 360s, I meant any. This was an issue though for wave 62, as I had to somehow separate out the two 360s and take both 360s on wave 62 without needing to Red X. Therefore, I decided to use almost the last of the remaining sweets besides some I would need for Jad, along with 4 to 5 recoils to take out the first 360 behind Italy Rock to the south by tick eating it head on. Then I would move on to luring the second 360 with the familiar method to the western rock and the flinch spot, where I would then flinch it and just hope to God that I was able to kill it before getting 6 hour logged by Jagex, as I did not have enough sweets and recoils to attempt this again. Luckily we had normal RNG, and well, we were on our way to Jad. Success! So I knew now that I wasn't going to be recoiling Jad that this instance was going to be a bit tougher than I had imagined. But I had not imagined that it would take nearly as long as it did, being over 30 hours of attempts to finally kill him. Testing Jad alone took many attempts and hours, but I had a crazy method down packed for taking him on along with his healers. At least I thought so. This method was risky, RNG dependent, and just hands down awful. I died several times perfecting this method on my alt. This singular wave though with this method was something I didn't think would take more than a day, but boy, was I wrong. Taking on Jad took me nearly a week. Yes, 1 wave, 1 boss, 1 week. I was now left with around 50 purple sweets and some onions to spare. I had a method for Jad I had tested countless times, but each one would require about 5 eats, meaning I had 10 full attempts to take on Jad and to take him down. More if you count me relogging before 2 hours if I never bring out his healers in time, as the initial lure only required 2 eats instead of 5. This food shortage wasn't the best scenario, but I calculated on average it should maybe only take me 4 attempts, as I would need just a little bit more than average RNG on one of the poisons along the roughly 8 I would need to complete Jad. Yes, Jad with healers would take me an average of 8 poisons along with its high defense and natural HP regen, plus its healer regen. This was because his hit points was 250 and would climb back to 250 from healers after likely 2 successful poisons. We would therefore need to inflict on average 6 more poisons after the healers came in, totaling to 8, and was dependent on the quickness of the re-poisons. I would average 1 poison every 56 minutes according to the math, at attacking this NPC every 10 ticks. If I did not summon his healers, which took roughly 2 poisons by 2 hours and 15 minutes, I would simply relog and put my bets on another attempt, wasting at least another 2 sweets. I would take Jad to the flinch spot southwest with the 2 tick eats, poison him twice, summon the healers, aggro the one closest to him and me, then flinch him to get the healer behind my back, then running into Jad's body. From here I would sit in his body and go north to the tile right before the north healer. The healer I had stabbed earlier would block Jad in along with the other ones just from healing him where his spawn was. I would make sure these healers were still healing them, as they would need to target him for the next process of this kill. I would stab Jad and make the north healer transparent, giving him a 50-50 chance to go south or north while running into the other flinch spot and tick eating a Jad hit. If the healer takes the 50-50 shot of going north instead of south, I would then run back into Jad's body and attempt the 50-50 chance again with an extra 2 tick eats and a tick perfect timing of running into Jad's body. If at any point I'm too close to Jad or miss the run back into his body during this, Jad can mage me or melee me, and there is no tick clearance to tick eat the mage attack within 4 tile range of him. Because the other healers are still targeting Jad, they'll perfectly line up south behind Jad, as long as the one I make transparent north of Jad goes south with that 50-50 chance. So if after 2 attempts that northern healer does not decide to go south, then I'll simply have to relog. And that is because if I make a 3rd attempt inside of Jad's body, the front healer will now be too far to the north, and therefore it won't be capable to stack behind Jad to the south. If at any point the healer goes south out of the 2 attempts, this is great. I would have had the 50-50 RNG I needed, and I can now step out of Jad's quick projectile range being 5 tiles away from him, tag the healer in the front, tick eat another attack, then time perfectly the run back right after before he shoots another attack, and I am too close to him, once again because I cannot tick eat a mage attack within 4 tile range of Jad. As you can see here on my test account, if I just barely miss time the run back, I can get hit by the mage projectile, and no tick eat is going to protect me from that. So after hours of testing, dying on Jad doing the testing and having to go all the way back up to him, testing him yet again, I think I was finally ready for a real attempt. Or maybe not. Anyways, let's send it. My first attempt was going great. I had the double poison off at an insanely quick pace, less than half of what it should have taken, and the healers were about to be summoned. Until, well, I disconnected again. This time I knew I was in the safe spot, but I was furious. This was awful. I was at Jad, over 100 hours into the fight caves, and I disconnected. Once again, my random ISP maintenance nearly wiped out a month of progress for this video and over 400 hours of purple sweet gathering. I could not lose focus now, and I could not lose internet now. I only had roughly 10 attempts to make this work, and after 2 years of preparation, I knew it was now or never. If I died at Jad now, the burnout would be incredibly worse than anything I had ever experienced before, and I would likely have to go back into exile to get 99 hit points and spend months more gathering purple sweets. So here I was, extremely disappointed. 4 more attempts had passed, and I could not even get close to a second poison off in what was before an easy first attempt, much less in over 2 hours and 30 minutes time. I had logged out 4 more times without ever getting that second poison off and getting close to summoning the healers like I had before the disconnect. My great RNG at first, which I disconnected on, killed the rest of it. My hard-earned sweets were slowly disappearing before my very eyes, and I was starting to become panicky and hopeless. What made my days to come even worse was the fact that I finally did get a double poison within 2 hours and 30 minutes, and this happened back to back a few attempts after the long 4 dry streaks. But something surprising happened which never happened in my testing. Okay, here we go. Oh, that's not good. I almost died here because of it and quickly scrambled, smashing my quick hop rune-like world hop key while moving as fast as possible to reset the wave while also attempting to stay safely in Jad's body. Come on, it's been 10 seconds, thank God. Oh my gosh. That could have been very, very bad. I got lucky. Just log out for today. This literally never happened on the 20 plus times I attempted this with the test account, and I could not figure out what was making the healer transparent and able to move through Jad's body. I thought maybe it was because of the way I was flinching Jad and because I stepped in the healer's body, even though the healer had moved after I stepped in its body, which didn't make much sense. But then I tested the exact same pathing on my main another 20 times, and it never happened to the main. Ever. Literally ever. The healer never went through Jad's body on the northern side. I was so confused. I figured it was just a fluke. And he's stuck. What is this? Makes no sense. Why does this work on this account but not the other one? I really don't know what is going on. I went again and finally hit another double poison in under 2 hours and 30 minutes. And it happened yet a third time to my defense peer. Alright, this time I didn't even step in his body, so maybe just that weird pathing was it. Oh, no. No. Now I knew it was not a fluke. And I thought maybe it was something as outlandish as my combat level compared to the healers when they aggressed me versus the one on my test account, which was maxed out. Or the gender of my character, which on my test account was a female rather than a male. Or even just the KP on my spear, as my test account was using normal weapon poison ++ on the spear when testing the Jad.
Success!
After spending another 10 to 20 hours deducting as many variables as possible on the test account as to what was causing this, nothing seemed to reproduce the same effect of the healers running through Jad's body on this lure as I experienced on my defense peer 3 times in a row, except for using a KP spear. Yeah, it was somehow the KP spear. It did it every single time while testing on my main account as well, but after that, nothing. Weird. The KP from the poison on Jad was somehow affecting its healer's aggression, and I still don't know why. But this was bad because I didn't want to rely on the less accuracy from the bone dagger. I needed as much as possible in that first 2 hours. So I looked towards other possible ways to actually lure the Jad that had somehow slipped right over my head this whole time. And the one that I found was the biggest solution to this wave was red Xing Jad so it did not move right as the healers came out, slipping secretly into its body and keeping it still while the healers then lined up and all was well without ever having to take the aggro on the northern healer. So I had planned out this new lure which should not come into the same complications as the previous 3. Finally though, after 5 days and 30 hours of Jad attempts, my time would come. Nice. What the fuck, dude?
Bro, what?
What? I didn't even need to waste those sweets, dude. What the actual fuck? Super quickly into the cave, I got a second poison off, and now it was down to the wire. It was time to test my new slightly altered healer method.
You ready for the red click?
So not really, but sure.
Isn't it right now? Like, isn't it like in 2 ticks? 2 poison ticks?
What the fuck?
Dude, what?
Success!
So it seemed to work. All the healers were around Jad trapping it off, and the one to the south wasn't moving inside of its body, making it move sporadically. But I still had to rely on the 50-50 RNG of the southern healer going north instead of south, and well, the first time was a fail. I survived the tick eat and moved to the new flinch spot, but the healer moved north instead of south and didn't lure itself behind Jad as shown in prior testing. I had one more shot though, and my time was so good on this run I decided to risk it all with a tick perfect body run into Jad. If this was missed by 1 tick, once again I could be melee or maged and killed instantly. Luckily, I was perfect. And here was the second attempt at pulling the healer south instead of north. Yes. Thank God, the timing was perfect, everything was looking up, and I got that 50-50 chance of the healer going south, pulling all the healers behind Jad in a perfect line. But it wasn't quite over yet. God, I'm fucking shaking, dude. Alright, here we go.
You got this, you know it's so exciting.
Oh my god. I tick perfectly ran out with the longbow, shot the first healer to stop the heals, then ran back out and then ran into the safe spot. By the way, the chance of me hitting this healer with range and getting XP is near nothing, but if it meant getting the fire cape, it was worth it either way. I probably should have brought more arrows though. Back on topic anyways, Jad was now lured. The healers were all in place and not healing. After that extremely stressful and scary experience for once, on this wave, things were looking up. I just had to get even worse than average RNG for the rest of the fight because of how quickly I poisoned Jad 2 separate times and got the healers out. Unfortunately, my luck went back in the other direction though after it had gone so well. Jad healed naturally all the way back up to full HP for an hour before I managed to poison it yet again. I was sweating bullets. If I had just slightly gotten worse than average RNG now with the poisons, then it was all over. Instead though, I got much better RNG, and the poisons were actually coming in quick now, or what I would consider quick after sitting here for a month doing all of this. Finally, if I could just hit Jad and poison him one more time in the next 30 minutes before he went over 96 HP, I could kill him. My luck was insane at this point for this wave, and although the average poison time was around 50 minutes on Jad, I believed hitting and poisoning in under 30 minutes could be done.
Get pot like a drip like you in the ass. Me mother, of course, if you fake I'm bashing. More than the world, I get paid with a passion. When did it start? I think I know. The second I chose to come out of my toe. Everyone gather, hold hands and let out a big fuck you balls on 2, 1, 2, coming through. Your crew look like 2 on food. Give a fuck about your blue motherfucker.
The final poison. It was there. All I had to do now was wait.
For my spot. Hold up, someone get this boy a hearse. I don't wanna live today.
Finally, after spending literal years preparing for this, and over a month inside the fight caves itself, the fire cape was mine. And it was by far my grandest achievement yet in this game. This goal took patience, a lot of testing, a little bit of perfection, and even some dumb luck. But I now had what was once this account's end goal on my back. If you're watching this now, then I want to let you know that I've decided to take this series on, and I will continue past the Fire Cape goal, and I will continue streaming the progress for this unique account, which I will need a lot of help from possibly even you, to achieve the next crazy goals I have in store. A lot of these I went over in the last episode if you have not yet checked that out, and I will be streaming right here on YouTube in the future, as well as on my Kick, which I'll link in the description below. An added benefit to achieving this Fire Cape was a few more combat achievement tasks, which I'll be going for the hard tier in. As well, I can now go into more OREC and purchase these obsidian plate legs by selling some chaos runes with my Karamja gloves for Tackle in exchange for the best in slot and another strength bonus. Not only did we get the +4 strength bonus from the Fire Cape, but we even got another +1 from these plate legs. And soon we would be hitting 2s with even swift blades and possibly ham joints at a rapid 3-tick speed. We had tons of strength bonus on this account, some which should not even be possible, including this cape and these legs. I wanted to give a shout out once again to Enlisted for sponsoring today's epic episode of the Defence Saga and giving me the possibilities to make the production so top tier on this video. Play Enlisted for free on PC, Xbox, and PS5. Follow the link below to download the game and get your exclusive free bonus now. I also want to give a shout out to the Scold for designing all the animations in this video, and of course my tier 2 Patreon supporters who helped me put more money into the production of these videos as well. Thank you all for making my wildest dreams of building the perfect trophy account a reality, and will still go even further beyond. These past couple of years I've now spent on 2 accounts, finally achieving what I thought to be nearly impossible has been amazing, and I'm glad you've been there every step of the way. If you enjoyed this video, well, it's my largest of the year, but be sure to subscribe for future uploads, or just check out the last videos in the series. I have tons of unique videos planned for the rest of the year. Thank you all, and I'll see you then.